So today the title of my talk is Where Do You Live? Where do you live? And I had actually a different idea about this talk than what it ended up being, which I always love when that happens. It does happen all the time. Yeah, because the idea originally was around, a little bit more around the physical, around what's happening in your life, which I say is a great indicator of what's going on in your mind, right? What's happening in your life is a great indicator of what's going on in your mind. And so what I ended up coming to and figuring out what I needed to say today, what was coming through me today, is that I needed to talk more about what was going on in your mind. And in that regard, where do you live? So, who follows the Science of Mind readings? A few people. So in this book, which is The Science of Mind, A Philosophy of Faith, A Way of Life by Ernest Holmes, this is the book that the basic teaching is mostly based on, in ministerial school, boy, do you have to study this book. All 700 pages of it. And yet, everything you need to know, I'm going to show you. That's the entire teaching. Right there.
Which chapter is it?
Which chapter is it? Well, the funny thing is, now here's the irony. It's not even a chapter. It's the introduction to the book. It's the introduction to the book is the entire teaching right there. The rest of the book basically talks about what these pages say. But the great thing is, it's a great source of inspiration, and they have this chart at the beginning of the paperback version of the book. It's not in the hardbound version of the book. So if you want to start following the daily readings, know that this chart is not in the hardbound. They have this chart so that you can do a daily reading, and by the end of 1 year, you've read the entire book. So today, the reading was based on the section called The Technique to Acquiring Faith. So when I talk about where do you live in your mind, I'm talking about faith. How do you acquire faith? Or is faith something that's simply there? So he writes this section of the book, The Technique to Acquiring Faith. So if you've been in any of my classes, you will know that when I talk about technique, because we teach specific guidelines for living, we teach specific ways of doing things, but here's the truth. Technique is anything that works. What works for me, my spiritual practice, may not, and most likely is not, going to be what works for you. You need to find what works for you. So technique is anything that works. So today, though, I'm going to tell you a little bit about acquiring faith. So first, we should talk about what is faith. What is faith? All right. So this is a definition of faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Who knows where that's from? Anyone know where that's from? Google. The reason that I bring it up is because I tried really, really hard after bombarding you with the Bible. I thought this week I'm going to really try not to reference the Bible at all, right? Of course it's from the Bible. It's from Hebrews chapter 11, it's verse 1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, for some reason in ministerial school, I never really thought to look up this quote, right? It is actually how, in this book, there's a glossary at the end of the book, and if you look up faith, that's the first sentence in quotations. But for some reason, I thought it could be attributed to Emerson. So I'm sure Emerson must have talked about it at some point, right? I mean, it sounds like something he would have said if you've read any of his essays. And I really, really, really love the quote, because what it does is it puts our mind in that place where we're responsible. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The evidence of things not seen. So here's what many of us do. We try and figure out why our lives are going wrong by looking for evidence about why our lives are going wrong. But we're looking out there. We're looking at the circumstances of our life. True faith is looking within and not being able to see the reasons why, but knowing that you can change them. Knowing that you can change them. So right now, what I'd like you to ask yourself is, what is faith to me? What is faith to you? What is it? What do you live and breathe and have faith in your life? Knowing that if you are firmly in the conviction of faith, you are unchangeable. You cannot be taken off of that path. Do you have faith in this teaching? Do you have faith in the science of mind principles? Do you have faith in this center that we are here to do good? Do you have faith in the inherent good of all people? All people. All people. Do you have faith that everything works out perfectly in the end? Do you have faith that everything is working perfectly right here and right now? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have faith in logic? Does faith require provability? The answer to the last question is no. Faith does not need to be proved, ever. And yet faith is so powerful. Faith is so powerful, but it doesn't need to be proved. If you simply live within your conviction, if you simply live within faith that your life is good, that everything is working perfectly, that everything is unfolding exactly as it needs to, then it does. That's what we teach. Why? Because, as I said earlier, we live in a universe that is based on the law, that works based on the law of cause and effect. For every cause, there is an effect. For everything that is going on in your life, you have created that. Oh, see, that's the other thing that a lot of people don't want to hear. You created it. You created it. By thinking the thoughts are cause. What happens in your life is the effect. So does faith require provability? No, but you're proving it every single moment of your experience, of your life. It is simply unfolding. That's the proof. The fact that you exist is the proof. The fact that you are here right now is the proof that faith works. Because you are here. And yet, I'm telling you, I do a lot of counseling sessions, and mostly what people are coming in for is they're looking for proof. They are looking for proof. I keep being faced with the concept of people coming to me and saying, my life is not going well. My life is not going well, so please prove to me that this teaching will change that. Please prove to me that this, having faith in these things, please prove to me that the faith will work. I can't do that. I can't. You either have faith or you don't. Now the truth is, you have faith. You have faith. If things are not working out for you, you have faith in the things that are not working out for you. So if you want to change that, put your focus on the things that you want. Put your focus on the things you require. Put your focus over here. Stop looking at the things that you don't want. It's hard because those things that you don't want, boy, do they rear their ugly heads a lot, don't they? My life is not going well. Prove to me that this teaching will change that. I can't prove anything to you. If you are looking for evidence in form, then I have taught you nothing from this pulpit. I will call it a pulpit. It's going to be even nicer when my podium gets here. I have faith that my podium will be here.
By May 25th.
Absolutely. Yeah, James Mellon, actually, I talked to him this week. He asked me, so has your podium arrived yet? I said, no. He says, I'm calling the guy right now. Because he wants it here for the 25th. He doesn't want to stand behind a music stand. If it's not here by it will be here by the 25th. But if it's not, then I'm going to decorate this in some way.
Yes. We'll make it into podium information.
Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. So stop looking for the proof of your faith. Start understanding what your faith is. What do you have faith in? Ernest Holmes defines faith further on in the glossary definition as a mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. A mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. When the mind cannot deny it, if you're in class, you know why I do this every time I talk about mind, right? Because we have this teaching tool, and we always put conscious mind up in the top of this big circle, and then it goes into the law, which is the middle circle, and then the effect, which is the bottom of the circle, right? So if that confused you, I apologize. And start coming to class. But, so it's a mental attitude, so inwardly embodied, which means it is up here. It is the cause to the effect. The effect is down here. The effect is your life. It is so inwardly embodied, this cause, that the mind can no longer deny it. The law cannot deny it. It simply corresponds and says, yes, I take this thing, this idea, I take this faith that you have in something, and I create. That's what God does. That's what God does. And who is God?
I am.
Yeah. Every single one of you is God. Every single one of you is God. I say it every single week. So now, oh, look, you have a lot of pressure on your shoulders, don't you? Because you have the faith of your convictions. You have the faith of something that is demonstrating as your life. So if you don't like your life, where is your faith? And how do you change it? A little bit further in that definition, Ernest Holmes does write, faith may be consciously generated. Faith may be consciously generated. So that's the even better news. So you're all living in faith, right? You are living in faith. The demonstration is your life. If you don't like it, faith can be consciously generated, which means you have the ability to put your mind on a new track, create from this new track a new cause, and your life will change. It can do nothing but, because the law simply corresponds to whatever is put into it. It's like a mold. It's like ice cube trays. You pour water into an ice cube tray. That is your thought. That is your cause, right? The water simply knows to take the shape, and when you take the ice out of it, that's your form. But the law only knows to do. It simply takes the shape of whatever you have put into it. So if you are not in a place of faith right now that your life is unfolding the way you would like it to, you can consciously change that. It does take tenacity. It does take conviction to do that. A lot of people don't want to do the work that it takes to do it, right? They want their life to turn on a dime. The truth is, it can. But boy, you better have changed your mind so thoroughly so that this new faith is so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. That's the only way instantaneous demonstrations happen. So today, see, remember I started off talking about the psalm readings? Right? So today, in the Science of Mind reading, he wrote, "We suffer because we are not in both conscious and subjective communication with the affirmative side of life. All human misery is the result of ignorance." I'm going to read it again because this is kind of a wordy quote, right? "We suffer because we are not in both conscious and subjective communication with the affirmative." What he's saying there, conscious communication with the affirmative, whatever we are putting into cause, whatever the cause is not in line with an affirmative life. The subjective is the law. The subjective communication is the law. When we are not in conscious and subjective communication with the affirmative, what are we in conscious and subjective communication with? The negative, the destructive. And so, what's happening is we end up suffering because of it. That's what he's saying here. All human misery is the result of ignorance. Nothing else. All human misery is the result of ignorance. Do you know what that ignorance is? Well, in a way, if you're ignorant of your own bliss, then you will suffer. But what is the understanding that leads to bliss? Everybody's saying. I have very good students. Consciousness is a great answer. But the answer that I'm really looking for is the understanding that you are God. All human misery is the result of the ignorance of the fact that you are the divine. You are the causative force in your own life. You are God. So misery is created when we think that God is something outside of ourselves. We believe that there is some power outside of us that can cause us harm. That's the only way that misery comes about. You can consciously change that by starting to put your mind and your belief on the track of your unity with and as the divine. And what happens is mind works. Your mind, which is an individualized, unique expression of the one mind, God, works. And we either consciously put our mind on the right path, or we allow external influences to change it for us. Now that's what a lot of us are doing. We're allowing that which is out there to inform us as to what we need to be thinking. It's not always for our highest good. Now, it's entirely possible that your life can unfold brilliantly without any conscious effort on your part. I'm sure there are people who live their lives like this. And it's also what I'm frequently talking about, these habitual patterns of thinking. Changing your habitual patterns of thinking from destructive to constructive. And then I get those people coming to me saying, "Oh, it sounds like so much work." And you know what? It is. I'm not going to lie. It is at first. Because the truth is, once your habit of destructive thinking is changed to a habit of constructive thinking, it no longer is work. It simply is. It's simply your new habit and how your life unfolds. We begin to live on the affirmative side of life. So, you are here to combat ignorance. When you defeat ignorance, when you defeat this idea that God is something outside of yourself, you can rise above any condition. And I'm talking any condition. Do I dare say it? Yes, because now it's come to mind, so I have to say it. And it is this one thing that usually gets people, and they think that they cannot rise above the condition, and the truth is you can. And I know that you can because I've not demonstrated it myself, but I've watched it. You know what I'm trying to say. I have watched it happen. I have watched somebody go through cancer and rise above the condition and change the condition. I have witnessed it. I have seen it with my own two eyes. I've experienced the entire thing. And cancer is a real hot button for a lot of people, right? Yeah. The truth is, you can change it. You can change it. And then I also have to honor the fact that, well, not the fact, but the possibility that there may be people in this room right now who are experiencing that, right? And I want you to know, do what you need to do, but also do it with the right mindset of understanding that you can rise above it. You can change the condition. And know that you are led in exactly the right place, in exactly the right time to do the things that it requires. And when you do this, then you are living in the faith of God. You are living in the faith as God, rather than a faith in God. Live in the faith of God, knowing that your word has power, that your thoughts have power, that your beliefs have power. Not a faith in God, which means the power is somewhere out there. You are living as the divine source, not believing any longer that you are subject to something outside of yourself. So, the title of my talk, Where Do You Live? Where do you live? Misery or happiness? Can you live in the place of faith that happiness is yours to have right now? Can you live in that faith?
Yes.
It requires that you wake up. So there's this wonderful little bit of information in the Buddhist philosophy. A person asked Buddha, "Are you God?" Buddha's reply was no. "Are you an angel?" Buddha's reply was no. "Then what are you?" "I am awake." I am awake. Now I think, just to clarify, well actually I should have read that correctly. It says, "Are you a God?" Because that does separate, right? So I could have done that a little bit better. Because the truth is, being awake to the understanding that you are not a God, but you are the divine source. Being awake to that can lead to a happy, happy life. So last week, I had this, idea that I could do a 4-hour talk. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I've been talking a really long time already, and I'm only about halfway through what I had planned. I may not get to the song lyrics, just briefly. Anyway, I don't have to comment on what I'm doing up here anymore, right? So I'm just going to continue because I'm having at it today. And I want to thank Gail for bringing me a large glass. So this week in the mental muscle course, we're talking about boundaries and priorities. And the exploration of boundaries has proven to be sort of a challenge for the people who are participating in that this week because they haven't really quite figured out how do you define your boundaries. What are boundaries, right? What are your boundaries? And this goes in line with where do you live, right? So what are your boundaries? The great way to know what your boundaries are, listen up if you're in mental muscle. What are the lines you won't cross in your life? What are your comfort zones in your life? Where do you live? Your boundaries set the limit to your experience. You cannot go beyond your boundaries unless easy for me to say. You cannot go beyond your boundaries unless you have faith. That mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. When you live from that place, when you live in a place of good so inwardly embodied, when you live in a place of joy so inwardly embodied, when you live in a place of peace so inwardly embodied, when you live in a place of love so inwardly embodied, when you live in a place of wisdom so inwardly embodied, when you live in that place of happiness so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it, your experience changes accordingly. What's happened is that we've simply forgotten this. We've forgotten that this is the truth, the basic nature of our lives. And that's what the song is talking about. That's what the song is talking about. In the song, the lyrics say, I know sometimes it's hard for you to see. You're caught between just who you are and who you want to be. You feel alone and lost and need a friend. But remember, every new beginning is some beginning's end. Where do you live? Are you living in the new beginning? Or are you caught up in the past? Are you caught up in the things that were? Because the more that you bring the past into your present experience, the more you experience more of the past. Right here, right now, wherever you are, is exactly where you need to be. With the understanding that if you're not happy with it, you get to change it. Now, there was an interesting thing that happened, right? And they get it because they know that I don't really want to talk about the Bible all that much, so Tana sends me. So here's a link to the song that we're going to sing, and you should listen. We did change one lyric. So the lyric used to be, we've all got the blood of Eden running through our veins, which they brilliantly changed to we've all got the same blood running through our veins. It's the same idea. It's the same idea. There's something interesting, though, about talking about Eden, because it goes back to this idea that we've forgotten, that we have forgotten what it was to live in the Garden of Eden. And just like heaven, like I talked about last week, heaven is an idea that can be so inwardly embodied that we are living it now. Heaven is not some far off place. So the same thing is, Eden is not some far off place. Eden can be an idea that we so inwardly embody right here and right now that we are living in the Garden of Eden. So welcome to wherever you are. Welcome to wherever you are. This is your life. This is it. Right here, right now, this is your life. And you know what? You've made it this far. Welcome. You've got to believe that right here, right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Right here, right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. That's the truth. And you have an opportunity right here and right now to change what doesn't work for you. By stepping more into faith, stepping more into that inward faith, that idea so inwardly embodied that the mind corresponds brilliantly. This is who you are, so embrace it. And know that you can change whatever is no longer working for you. And the reason you can do that, I'll say it again, because you are God. You are God. You are God. You are God. That's the truth. You are a perfect, divine idea that is living, breathing, having its way right here and right now. And so I honor you. I love you. And I give tremendous thanks for you. Namaste.